Hi, Kelvin. I'm really happy to have this conversation with you today, and I'm really looking forward to our chat.
Same here. I'm excited to see what we will talk about, and the pleasure is all mine.
Yeah, that's great. So, you and I actually met a few weeks ago at the Africa Impact Festival. And it's really funny because I actually thought about this on my way back home that day. I was wondering what this thing is. It's a feeling that I had, but I can't find a name for it. I was speaking to somebody before you approached, so one of your co-panel speakers, and you came along and you asked us to go and eat something. And I just remember being in a group, I think we were together for maximum 30 minutes in a group of three other Ghanaian men who I just met, basically. And I felt like I was enveloped in like a circle of people who felt like brothers to me. And I was wondering,
Yeah.
have I just been so disconnected from home for a long time? Or was I just, I don't know, is that Ubuntu? Is that, what would you call that?
I don't know, but I would say maybe I would say maybe a little bit about familiarity and also just a connection, or I would say DNA ancestry, whatever you want to call it, because also these guys you were speaking about were people that I had also just met at the event. It was the first time I was meeting them.
What?
Yes, but it felt like we had known each other for a very long time. But that's how deep I think maybe ancestry goes because for me, whenever I meet a fellow African or Black or any, however you identify yourself, I always have this, I would say, openness to accept people and to see you as a brother and see you as somebody that I've known you because I find that to be the best way to live, to always kind of like trust people blindly in a way right from the get-go, and and then only when somebody gives you an opportunity to be careful or to sort of like stay back, then I say, okay, maybe I need to step back and look at this from a distance. But usually personally I just prefer to connect, and it's the same feeling from the other side as well. So they were also willing to share, and then we started connecting and we realized that we have a lot in common. And look at you, I mean, when we were together you felt like you were Ghanaian as well.
Absolutely. But the thing is, I'm not that way. So that's why for me, it was a bit of, I really was on the way back home wondering what was that? Because I've heard of that. We say, okay, we're all Africans. But to be honest, I think in my experience, the furthest of feeling that, not just knowing it's there,
Hmm.
is when you're a minority in an area, you see each other, you make eye contact, you do the nod. That's as
Hmm.
far as I think I've really felt it. And every other time, it's been more something that I take for granted or I know. But this was a bit different. It felt like I could feel it. So it wasn't just a given, it was an
Yeah.
actual feeling. So I
Yeah.
actually thought you guys were friends who knew each other for long. And I thought maybe I was just feeling the bond between you guys that made me feel like I'm surprised to hear that you didn't know each other at
No,
all.
we had just met right from the get-go at that event, and we just sort of like kind of like first date and everything went okay. And to be honest with you, now we've now become friends. We exchange contacts, and now I don't know if maybe part of it is also because I tend to engage people around me and make them feel comfortable to be themselves, to share and feel the need to or feel like they belong, right? I don't know if it's a personal thing or it's the same everywhere, because I do recognize what you're describing, that, some other people sometimes feel that we are not, coming together. You go to a place, you see another African person, and sometimes it's hard to even go and say hi, or, you just do the nodding and the eye contact thing, and that's it. But personally, I decided, some years back that, hey, if I go anywhere that I see, someone from Africa or a black person or something like that, I'm gonna always try to engage them and hear their story and know who they are. Maybe it's also a little bit more about what I do professionally And so it makes it easier for me to talk to people. I've had that experience, but yeah, it's something that I'm hoping that I can sort of show people by doing, right? That it's that easy to bond with people who you don't know, right?
No, absolutely. You also did buy me some food that day, so thank you for feeding me. I definitely
Yeah,
felt taken care of.
yeah, it's part of the because I want to always bring together. I mean, back here in Munich, my wife is always hosting this dinners and inviting people over to eat Ghanaian jollof, and she's a great cook, by the way. Shout outs to her. And she's always, so I think we all the people around us, we tend to attract people to us, and so maybe it's become part of me. Maybe that's why.
I think that's a really beautiful thing that you and your wife are doing, and it's absolutely felt. It's so that's why I'm saying it's not just something that I know, because I know African people are warm in general, but the feeling is something that doesn't happen always for me. So I really made note of that, and I was wondering, what was that? So thanks for sharing, and I'm even more happy to hear that you guys didn't even know each other, which is, yeah, kind of wild to me. Anyway, so you are a financial expert. You're a financial coach, a consultant, a mentor, financial planner. What have I left out?
I would say when anything that involves money, I'm part of it.
So you're the
Yeah.
money guy. And how did that come about? Like, how did you end up in this money game, or at least
Yeah.
becoming an expert with money? And I guess that's also probably tied to your story on how you came to Munich, Germany, where you are
Hmm.
at the moment. Could you maybe
Hmm.
just tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm more than happy to share that. And, a lot of people tend to discover what they want or what they want to do pretty late in their life. Me, it has always been different, and I have always known what I wanted to do right from the get-go. When I say get-go, I'm talking about grade 4 or grade 5 or something like that.
Oh.
And it's not because I also discovered these things by myself. It's just because I had people around me that helped me understand what my strengths were and what I could potentially do or where I could excel. So I come from a family, I don't come from a rich family. My dad, repaired watches for a living, right? So sometimes I always say that if he was in Switzerland, he would be a millionaire because, he was that good. Like he knew every kind of watch and he could fix any kind of watch. And my mom
Mm.
was a trader, right? Selling, in Ghana we call it force, but it's less like the story jets from Europe and parts of the other world, they send it to Africa and then you resell it. So that's what my mom used to do. So like story jet clothing here and then they send it to Africa and then people buy that cheap. In Ghana we call that foods or downtown boutique or whatever you want to call it. People have different names. But that's what my mom did, to take care of all of us, my siblings and I. And I'm super grateful that they did that and they sacrificed their happiness and their freedom to put us through, good education and all of that. But, business and money stems from there because my mom was a trader. I used to go help her out with, the selling. I would sometimes on Saturdays when my friends are going out to play, I would go to head to the market. I would be the one, negotiating with people who wants to buy some of these things, do all like the money counting, the accounting aspect of it. Even though at that time I didn't know it was accounting I was doing, but I was doing that. So right from that point, I realized that I had a thing for finance or business or money. And my big brothers, friends, they used to tell me that, hey, Kelvin, you're great at math as well. So we think that you should focus on math and business and stuff like that. So even though, in Africa, everybody wants to be a doctor, engineer, stuff like that, for me, I knew from the get-go I wanted to do finance. So that's really like the root of it. But from there, my life had always been towards, okay, how do I, become a financial expert? How do I, help people manage money better? So in Ghana, after my university, I actually started, I got my license from the Ghana. Securities Commission, SEC, Commission, and I also did like the Ghana stocks, capital markets training thing, and I have the certificates for that. So after I did that, I started approaching all my friends and family. I said, hey, this is what I know now. Let me help you maximize your wealth. And people were at that time clueless about, what they could do with their money, and it was just sitting in their bank accounts. And these banks would loan them out, make a lot of profit, but then when they go for, loans, they don't get like favorable terms. So I just, compile all of that together. I think it was at that time almost 200,000 euro dollars that I was managing for these folks, and I didn't do much actually. I was just buying treasury bills and some stocks options for them, and I made them some good money, and then they paid me because of it. So I did that, and then when I decided to move to Germany to, further my education, and my master's was actually also in investment banking, corporate finance, and actuarial science. It's a mouthful, but I did it all. And I wanted to do that so that I could potentially go back to Ghana and, continue what I was doing, help medium, small companies, better manage their finances, because I think finances or financials is like one of the core areas for any business survival or growth. And there is a huge problem in the African continent of having that capability to manage finances and be able to scale and grow. Right. So my plan was always to go back and, set up a business that will basically do that and help individuals. But I found myself working with SAP right after I finished my master's. And I loved my coworkers so much. They made me enjoy the work at SAP. SAP is actually a great employer, by the way. And I was happy there, to be honest. So I ended up spending 6 years at SAP. But after 6 years, I started feeling like I'm getting a little bit more rooted here. My family joined me here. I have kids here now. So even though in my mind, I still think, in the next 5 to 10 years, I still potentially see myself going to do something in Ghana to still, help. I I started asking myself the question, hey, I'm working in corporate and I'm helping these companies do better investment decisions, do proper financial planning, maximize their profitability, and ensure some good cost controls and build better processes. But that is only for a corporation. And if I wanna help my community, how can I do that? Right? And the only way I can do that is if I enable people to know about finance and build better financial habits and financial wealth as well, right? That way they can support their people in Africa with whatever business ideas they want to set up, or they themselves can become angel investors, or they themselves can become entrepreneurs, go back and do stuff. I don't want to be advocate for people going to always beg for money, look for investors out there, and that's one way of doing things if you want to do something very quickly. But another way is always to bootstrap. Bootstrap is basically using your own savings to build a company. And a lot of the time, most of our guys, they don't have any money saved. So even if they have an idea, they cannot act on it unless somebody is willing to fund it. So there's a lot that goes into that, but really that's where my passion is coming from, and saying that, okay, how do I drive impact? I'm not a product person. I cannot create a product or a physical product, right, to help a problem in Africa or in this country. But what I do have is I am a solution oriented person, and I provide solutions, either company or private individuals. And this is the way I could do it. That's why I found myself in finance, because I'm an expert in finance. And if I want to help people, it can only be through finance, nothing else.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that's a really like comprehensive snapshot of how you started, and I really like the analogy of your father also being a specialist in a way, like with the watches, and your mom also, being a trader, and then you sort
Yeah.
of optimize these processes with finance, and I think that's really great. So I'm just wondering, when I met you, you were also on a panel talking about the importance of finance for African startups. And one of the things that you mentioned was that part of the problem, or like one of the first things that you always notice, is that these startups or individuals often don't have the information that is actually widely available. Why do you think that is? Because I also, speaking personally, feel that finance is something that when I hear the word, I immediately, I'm good with maths and science and stuff, but finance for some reason makes me feel like, oh, it's going to be complex or complicated. Why do you think finance is such a stumbling block for people?
I think, well, first of all, it's because the entire educational system is not designed to help us understand finance from a fundamental point of view. Sometimes I think that it's designed that way so that, you wouldn't be able to understand how the ins and outs of money works and to build wealth for yourself. Because I tell you what, people that do not have like a good financial habit or a good, you know, wealth building mindset is the ideal candidate for corporations in the world because it means that you are expender. It means you just spend and you make them rich. And funny enough, when you talk to most Germans or people from brought up in developed countries, the ratio of people that are comfortable with finance and people who are not is quite high. Most Germans taught right from the beginning about money and they know how to structure their money. When they are teenagers, their parents set up stress funds for them, stuff that can help them already by the time they are 25, 30, have enough wealth to be able to start building businesses of their own. So that structure is sort of like helping them already, you know, get an upper hand, an advantage. I think if you read, I think Rich Dad Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki, it's the same ideology because rich parents tend to teach their kids make finance like just like English for them, so they know it like they know English. Or whatever their mother tongue is, but unfortunately for us in developing countries, we are not privy to that information. Sometimes it's like yeah, I don't know. It's not funded with facts, but I feel like the system is designed to make us not understand finance. And in another thing is also just that because of what we've gotten ourselves used to, we sometimes think that we cannot understand finance or we shouldn't understand finance or it's not in our scope to understand finance. If we need something about finance, we will go talk to a banker. And but that's a fallacy, I think, that we need to change. I'm not entirely sure why people are so afraid of finance because anybody who loves numbers should love finance. So maybe you can tell me a little bit what about finance that scares you so that maybe I can figure it out. We can narrow it down.
Yeah, sure. I think maybe I'd say maybe scare is a bit too strong, but what makes me feel uncomfortable is often the conflicting information I receive. So an example is especially right now with personal finance and entrepreneurship having been, I think, a trend in the last couple of years. We hear that a lot and like on YouTube and a lot of these podcast interviews, and you have these financial experts telling you, even with the books that you mentioned. For example, I think I recently read Millionaire Fastlane as well, which I don't know if you know that book, but which I also actually I felt like was one of the first books that I read that really was not complicating it for me. And so firstly the conflicting information, and another one is also, I think I've heard from one of these podcasters or, an interview where they said for entrepreneurs, it's always best to use somebody else's money to make your mistakes. And then you hear that, okay, but bootstrapping is better. So all these different sources of information. And I think another third thing, which for me personally has been a topic, is the trust that we seem to have in the stock exchange or in trading is almost like the economy is a guaranteed machine, you know what I mean? And so part of me is like, well, I'm wondering if that is actually grounded in this assumption that it's always going to be reliable, that you will always get returns. But then I also watch documentaries where people in the US are retiring and they're not getting any of their retirement money that was invested through pensions in the stock exchange. And I'm like, what am I supposed to do?
Yeah. Well, I think you describe it very well. So, well, let me take it one by one. With the conflicting information you just mentioned, I think it's got to do a lot because there are always a lot of different drivers and different factors. Geographical factors, there are racial factors, systemic factors, government factors. So a lot of different things, and a lot of time, depending on where you are, you can sort of optimize. Because for me, I always see to be like a zero sum game. And yes, they can always create more money in the system, but it's always moving around, right? From one person to the other. So, and when that happens, then it means that it's almost like a game. Sometimes you take it, sometimes I take it. And because of that, a lot of the time, people will always say whatever they want to say to advance their own agenda, or sometimes also, based on what has worked for them, they will also promote that to be the best thing. So, in terms of conflicting information, I always say that just first of all, understand where you're living. Where are you living? In our case, we are in Germany. So, what systems work in Germany? I give you one example. I have one client who was talking to me the last time, and then he was like, Kelvin, real estate right now, we think the interest rates are gonna go down, and it's better to wait and buy the property and stuff like that, right? But everything that he was describing was relating to the U.S., right? And how the US real estate market works like. And the real estate market in the US is completely different from the real estate market in Germany, for example. So the same economic factors that work in the US might not necessarily work in Germany, for example, and vice versa. So you have to understand where you are. Yeah, it's unfair. That's why I come in a lot of the time, and I don't mean to sell myself, because that's exactly why I want to be doing this, because I find people come to me all the time with questions, and I help them answer that, because again, I have more access to information. But whenever you go to these platforms, YouTube, Facebook, Reddit, or all of these forums, a lot of the time the individual problem is not fully understood, and so the answers there seems generic, and a lot of the time you need a customized solution for your individual case, because we all don't have the same goal or same approach to getting rich. We have different risk factors, we have different access to money, we have different definition of being financially free and wealthy. So this guy Naval something, he's a very popular financial guru. He says that all can be wealthy because wealth is not a zero sum game. So if you can understand what your individual aspiration is, objective is, then you can find a solution that is tailored for you. Most information you will find out there is generic, so it can be conflicting. And a lot of the time on the internet, sometimes the information is also outdated. What was the second point again?
The second one was that often this trust that the economy is a guaranteed machine that we will definitely get our returns from when we invest in it.
Yeah. So it's not more so about the economy being a guaranteed that you would, get returns from it. It's just the fact that when you invest in the stock market, for example, is filled with companies, and companies who are trying to provide to society. So every company has something to offer to society. And we have definitely consumers. So as long as there is a need and a want, there will always be that business or that foundation that something is running. And then when you think of it like, okay, now all the people that are providing, they also need to be rewarded for their effort, right? So if they're going to be rewarded for their effort, you cannot say that they will never be rewarded for their effort, right? They will be rewarded for their effort. In the short term, they might not be. And that's why sometimes you see these ups and downs, but in the long term, eventually everybody is in business to make a profit. So when we talk about stock markets and we talk about these, ups and downs, it's also a little bit more in relation to different types of companies and the fact that, people expect some companies to grow or not. It's gone. I don't want to explain stock market in this, 10 minutes because it's bigger than that. But fundamentally, if you consider all the companies in the world, and let's say you bought every share of every company in the world, fundamentally, you would always have a little bit of growth because population, as we know it today, is also increasing. So if you ask me, I always say that as long as there is inflation and there is population growth in the world, there will always be growth. Because if you are selling one thing today, tomorrow you have two more people to sell it to. And even if in the future population is not growing anymore, then yeah, maybe we might have saturation in the growth. Then there wouldn't be that much growth. Then the question then becomes like the people themselves consuming more than they used to consume. But that is not usually the case. If you ask yourself how much you eat today, you don't eat significantly more than you ate last week. So it's the same thing that you're eating. So if you were buying $10 from this company every month, most likely you will always buy that. And
Mm.
then so if more of you come on board, then the company will now have more things to sell. That's one side. And then you have the inflation aspect, which is also another side.
No, I like how you explained those two. And the last one was the example you gave about bootstrapping. Why is it that you think that startups should, or at least you didn't say startups, but I think individuals who want to start businesses should rather bootstrap instead of using investor funding?
Yeah, so maybe I'll just correct myself. I didn't mean to say that you should ultimately go with bootstrapping. It's not that that's the way. It is an option to have. There are different ways, and one of it is to go to investors to, get you money to do it. But both of them have their own advantages and disadvantages. And for me personally, when you think you have a real solution to a problem in the world, and you are thinking about maximizing your wealth, the best way of it is bootstrapping because then you're not using anybody's money for it, right? But a lot of the
Yeah.
time when you just have an idea and you go to investors, often often you don't even get 50% of it. You have less of it because then the investor is taking all the risk. So yes, of course, if you have an idea you are not so sure about whether you will make it or not, and it's not, you don't, then you can think of, just going to get somebody's money to do it, right? But when I talk about bootstrapping for the African community and, at that event, that it's like a good option to have, it's also because the system is designed not for us. So a lot of the time, if you are an African person who wants to get money for some idea, it's difficult for you to get the support because there are not so many black angel investors out there who would already be able to connect with you culturally, because a lot of the time it's not just so much about the business idea that you have. Most angel investors invest in you as an individual. They see you, they see your hunger, your passion, your likelihood to succeed, and they invest in you. The idea, yeah, there's no new idea in the world. People are probably doing the same thing somewhere. So it's more or less like betting on whether you can bring that idea into fruition. And a lot of the time, most angel investors are non-African. So if you have an African person coming in front of you, it takes much extra effort to convince the person to give you money, right? Eh, And I don't blame anybody. It's just the way it is. If I always give this example that, even when I'm in Ghana, if I'm in Ghana and I have a property, for example, and I have a Nigerian coming to me to rent a property and a Ghanaian coming to me to rent a property, even if on the plate they are the same, I'm more inclined to give the apartment to the Ghanaian than the Nigerian. Why? Because I'm just culturally connected to the Ghanaian. I just feel like I know the Ghanaian more, right? So that same metaphor, right? If you think about it, it runs through everywhere.
Yeah. No, thank you. I absolutely like the explanation, especially how you really sort of maybe also brought to light or highlighted how money and decisions connected to money are not just about the flow of money. It's actually based on emotional decisions, it's based on cultural context, it's based on people's beliefs even. I think there's that book, The Emotion of Money, or is it but it's just really fascinating, but also how value is created. And some people even say money is energy. It's quite a complex concept, but also quite simple. It's complex
Yep.
and simple. How does that tie into your own life? And also, like, what is your vision for working then with people on a personal level versus on a corporate level? Because on corporate, you are behind the corporate machine, you're representing somebody else. And when you are working with individuals or startups or small businesses, you're at the forefront now. You don't have that machine. Is there a difference for you?
Yes, yes, absolutely. There is a difference. I mean, I have to say the satisfaction that comes from helping individuals achieve whatever financial goal they have, or a small business achieve whatever goal they have, is amazing because you can see the real impact. And the same, I think, will apply to people working in corporations as well. And if corporations usually do a better job of connecting, certain outcomes or, performance of the company to individual contributions within the company, and people can say that, okay, this work that I'm doing is what is directly causing this success for this company. A lot of the time you will get also that satisfaction from it as well, that feeling that you created an impact. So that's why maybe I stayed also in the corporate world for so long, and why I'm still partially still there, not thinking of just jumping out like that, because I also do enjoy the stuff that I do there, because I'm able to also help people's life become easier in the corporate world by fixing processes, for example. Or if a company is trying to, bring their share price to a certain amount, what are the things that they need to do to show investors that they are being profitable to achieve that? If I'm also able to help them do that, then I can also say, hey, you see that company, I was able to help them get do this. One of my companies I worked with raised 135 million in funding round, and I was very instrumental there to do that, setting up the financial books in a way that helps investors to get the right insights to make the decision of investing, for example. And for me, I can forever say I helped this company survive, right? By getting them the funding round. So that's the same satisfaction that I'm trying to bring also or get when I do, small businesses or, private individuals. But it is a special feeling when you know you are also helping your community. Because
And what do you mean by your community?
when I say my community, I mean Black and people of color. Because I do think that we need a seat at the table wherever we find ourselves, because we also matter. But a lot of the time, because we don't have what it takes, or we don't have the right credentials to show that we also belong, a lot of the time we are ignored, or we are we have to work extra to prove a point. And all of these things, I feel that is something that needs to change because at the end of the day, we are all the same people. We are all the same. If the same way you would see, an Indian, a German, an American, a British person, you should see the same for an African person or a black person, right? And so I personally want to be able to help from a financial side change the status quo. I want to get to a point where in Munich or in Germany, there are a lot of African landlords, for example, or there are a lot of African businesses that support each other. Do you know that the African community is the third largest population in Germany?
No, I did not know that.
Yes, if you take the Turkish people, like Germans, Turkish people, Africans are the third. Not even other European, because yeah, if you want to put all other Europeans together, then maybe Africans are number four. But if you consider Africans and African descent and what we call Africans, we are number three largest population in Germany. But how many black-owned successful companies do you know, right?
Almost, yeah. I would have to. I mean, I've stumbled across, but when you say like established, well established ones, maybe that is a difficult question to
Yes,
answer. Yeah.
absolutely, right? But I think there is potential to do more, but just because we have this systemic barriers and also personal barriers, we tend not to break out of that bubble. And I'm trying to find a way to do that through financial literacy and literally promoting wealth.
Wow, that's really, I mean, thanks for sharing that. I think that's also while you were speaking, and when, especially when you mentioned the example with the investors and how when an investor invests in you, they're not just investing in your company, but in you as a person. I
Yeah.
mean, logically, I know that, right? But as you were saying it, I really am agreeing with it because I've had the same feeling for therapists here in Germany. I absolutely, there was a time where I was looking for one, and I felt like I really was looking for somebody who could relate to me. And to be honest, I didn't care whether they were what race they were. I just needed a person of color because I felt like I didn't want to explain things that don't need explaining, that there are just
Yep.
some things that somebody who can relate to your experience might not need an explanation for. So
Yep.
as you were saying that, I was like, well, why have I not considered that on the financial part of it? So absolutely, I
Yep.
think these examples
Yep.
really help. And
Yep.
it's not even about, like you said, you wouldn't be racist towards or nationalist or xenophobic towards the Nigerian person if you were the landlord, but because there are certain things that you already don't have to ask, I guess, with the
Yep.
Ghanaian, that person might subconsciously gain extra points from you.
Yep.
I think that is insightful, but also a little bit scary to understand about human psychology. Would you agree?
I Yes, I completely agree. That's why, and I think when you can understand it from that point of view, a lot of things will make sense, and you will know how to position yourself or what you have to do to get what you want or what you need. An example is, if you're looking for an apartment in Germany, whenever I have looked for an apartment, I always get it. Why? Because I always will go above and beyond to show the landlords that, hey, I'm a better tenant than a German that right, who's on the list. Not just because I think the landlord will be a racist person or doesn't like Africans or not, but I just feel that familiarity is a big issue and a big thing. So I want to, prove that he can also be with me. It's the same with in the corporate world when you are in a team with other nationals and your boss or the head of the company is not from your cultural background, or I would say, I don't even want to use the word race, but like from your point of view, so to say, right? Or societal understanding of how you live and all of that, you have to always prove that, hey, I'm not just like everybody else,
Hmm.
right? Because there is that problem that because one, especially of BPOC people, there's a high illiteracy rate, and whenever there is illiteracy, there's a lot of criminality, there's a lot of other things that, exponentially, makes negativity about the community greater. So we need to be able to break out of that. And it's not an easy thing. I don't want people to think that it's an easy thing to just do. You need to consciously work towards it to say, hey, until now, this is what you've known. But now we are changing the story. Now we deserve to be at the table. Now we also can think like you or even better like you, right? So, and that is that part where I feel a lot of people are missing and tend to blame a lot of macro factors. And I think if we can start solving problems from a micro point of view, look at our own perception, understand how the world is currently being run, and break out of that. Then, when you are in a position of power, you can then change. And it comes naturally, I would say. It would come naturally. Because then, once you've now been able to prove and you can show that, hey, there is an African bank now in Germany. There is no Afro Bank in Germany. I'm hoping to be the first person to set up an Afro Bank in Germany. There is now a big, company in manufacturing or engineering company that is owned and run by Africans. Did you know? So now people's mindset will start changing. Oh, okay, you know, that's how I see it, right? And it's not to say that I just, yeah, it's just the way I see it.
No, that's absolutely important. I think that's also just that's the point of this is to share the different perspectives. And one of the things I also sort of maybe my hypothesis is some of these people exist already, or a lot of them exist. We just don't get to hear, see these individuals, and mainly the platforms that we engage
Yep.
in, the spaces we are in. I think the narratives that we are fed sometimes do not match reality.
Yep.
So I'm also just wondering, you mentioned like a micro approach to changing the status quo. Can you maybe give us some points, whether it's on a personal level or on a startup level, that you think these are some key micro places to start in order to improve your financial literacy? What do you think are the micro habits that people, specifically within the African context, whether they are living in Germany or as expats, what are the things that you feel are really key or like foundational?
Yeah. Let me put it this way, and I will say it from a financial point of view, right? It's not that difficult to build wealth, to be honest with you. It's just a little bit difficult if you want to do it in a very short period of time. But it's not necessarily difficult. And when people know this, they will start pursuing it and saying, hey, it's possible for me. And what I have realized, at least in my conversations and with all the clients I've met until now, it's always about the mindset. It's about the mindset. So,
Mhm.
my advice to anybody would be to start developing yourself internally. Start reading books about personal development. Start reading books about, going outside of the box, or, pushing you to beyond your immediate visible possibilities, and to reach out for it. Because I feel like a lot of the time We are like ants. Did you know that if you draw like a circle around an ant, they would not be able to go beyond the line,
I've
even though
seen
it's
that.
even if it's an invisible barrier. So I feel like how we've grown up, how we all have our individual stories that have shaped us to become who we are. Our circumstances, environments have made us who we are today. So you have to do something internally. That's what I mean by micro, to start reading books, reading about how to change mindset, practicing personal development. I personally started meditation and I do a lot of yoga. Can you believe that? But I see that it helps me a lot, to, just make all the noises go away and focus on what I need to focus on. Because there will always be those external factors, especially when you have family back home calling you, a lot of things. You always get easily distracted, but build a resilient mind and attitude towards money. And that's the key thing to becoming successful in anything, whether financial or business wise or anything. That's what all the rich people will tell you.
Yeah. No, that's really good to know. I think that's absolutely why I love these conversations because how would I know you do yoga? So I'm also a part-time Pilates teacher.
Really?
Yes. And I think this is just, yeah, absolutely great because you've touched on so many things that I want to ask you questions about, but I know because of time, I can't ask you every single question, but I'm
Yeah.
really interested in also this vision that you have, right? The connection
Hmm.
between Ghana and Germany. As
Yeah.
an expat in Germany, but you mentioned already in the beginning that you've always had this vision to create things back in Ghana. How is
Hmm.
that? How are these coexisting? Because you also have a flourishing life here in Germany.
Well, I'm not sure about flourishing. I'm content with what I have, but I also have more aspirations, and I there are things that I'm also aspiring to have to build for myself and my family. But when I think about doing something to benefit Ghana, right? It's just because that's where I come from, right? And I want to be able to, you know, by the way, I have a lot of Indian friends, right? And a lot of them are so proud of India right now with how India is like progressing and, now becoming like a known capable country. I don't know if I can say that about Ghana, to be honest with you, right? I feel like there we have so much potential and we could be better at so many things that we are doing, but there are so many systemic problems that needs to be fixed that cannot be fixed. And can I fix all of them? No, unless I probably become the president of Ghana. But I want to find again a micro aspect to it and say that what is the closest possible thing to me that I can do to change the narrative for Ghana. Little drops of water makes a mighty ocean. So if I'm tackling this, or a group of people like me tackling what we are tackling, there will be other people tackling other things, and together we will, come into like a convergence, and that will, you know, make Ghana become the country it's supposed to live up to its potential. So for me, I'm still trying to figure out what would become the ultimate business that I would want to go and do in Ghana. I don't want to go and do a charity case in Ghana. I want to do a business in Ghana that will also, you know, prosper me and the country. As for me, it's all about win-win. Maybe it's just a financial mindset. It has to be a win-win. So I'm yet to do that, but one of the key reasons why I came to Europe in the first place was to come and see how things are done in Europe and build certain, disciplines and certain understanding so that when I go back, I will be able to at least implement that, say them. So at least being here, maybe building that credibility to be able to exert that influence. And for people that do not have that credibility yet, maybe they can also do that from a micro perspective, but think about also building that credibility to be able to change the status quo because it's not easy to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can totally relate to that because sometimes it's a bit of a conflict. But basically, I think I absolutely relate to what you said about the charity topic because I think being a charity case and it's often maybe a perception that's not helpful to people because it does not empower anybody or it does not necessarily, I mean, it does make an impact, but I'm
Hmm.
not sure if that's all we need. So I'm totally with you that we also do need solutions. I don't think that's just a financial thing. I think that's also just part of the dignity of being a capable people. And I also wonder with that, like, do you think that there are parts of you from Ghana, like your Ghanaian cultural habits or skills or just even things that you never really consciously made a note of that are being an advantage now that you're in Germany that you've noticed? Because I also realized, at least for me being an expat here, is that you can sort of take good things from both sides. And of course, there also will be negative from both. Or did you have a different experience and you just found that the first world approach was the perfect experience?
No, no, not at all. I would say the aspects of Ghana that I take with me everywhere I go is definitely the hospitality mindset or approach, because in Ghana people are very hospitable. I don't know how it is. I haven't been to so many other African countries, but Ghanaians are very easy to relate with. So I find that the same way here in Germany. Everywhere that I have found myself, I find myself building relationships very quickly, gaining influence through just the way I present myself, and I know a lot of things can be done when now I know now that a lot of things can be done when you just have good relationships with people, because people do things for you not because they have to, but because they like you. All right. So, and that, you know, skill, or I don't know, trait that I have from Ghana is definitely helping me a lot in building relationships here in Germany. And obviously, I come from a very hardworking family. So I've been, you know, right from the get go, always been taught how to fend for myself. Can you believe that when I went to the university, I never once took money from my parents? I found my own ways of taking care of myself through university. So I have that survival mindset that, hey, I don't need to wait for somebody to come and do something for me. I need to find a solution to every problem that I have, right? And that, I think, when I started the corporate world here, immediately became a huge, differentiator for me, proposition or differentiator, however you want to call it. And I was able to immediately, start finding problems everywhere and then start solving them. And that quickly also put me on the map, and then everybody wanted to give me more problems to solve, and then I kept solving them and solving them. And that's why today one of the problems I'm trying to solve is financial literacy in the African community. So I'm trying to also solve that. So that aspect from Ghana, I think, is the two main things. But definitely other things that I've also captured here, which is a key thing to maybe the little success that I've seen so far, is the can do mindset and the outspoken mindset. Initially, I was very, reserved when even when I had an idea, I didn't want to share it, or I was very timid to oppose ideas. But one thing I learned very quickly is that most Germans, right, are trained to be very upfront and like tell you what it is, tell it as it is, and to be able to tell you what they think without emotion. That logic analytical mindset. And most people, they have their facts as well. It's not like they just blindly do that. But also some of them, even if they don't have the facts, they, with the confidence with which they will say it, it seems like, yeah, they know it. But a lot of the time, I've realized that I've known better. So I quickly learned that if I want to also be successful in this country, I need to be able to speak up more, to be able to disagree and agree more, and yeah, to be outspoken. And that has been a very, good development that I've adopted, since I moved to Germany.
No, that's really helpful. And how do people get in touch, connected to your financial literacy in Africa? What do you call it?
Well, I'm calling it a decline finance, and a decline just means the leading or the leader, right? In Ghanaian language, Akan. So I, I want us to lead finance and to become the leading, in everything that we do. And to be honest with you, until now, I haven't, people have only reached out to me through, network marketing, so to say, which is because of the good stuff I've done for people. And then they tell their friends about it, and then they find me, basically. Because, like you said, you were looking for an African therapist or a black therapist or somebody you can relate to. And a lot of the time, there are a lot of people also here who just want somebody who probably will understand them better to help them make better financial decisions. And I can also tell you that I've seen people that have gone to, other financial experts who are not from the same cultural heritage as we are, and they have done certain things for them that does not necessarily benefit them. And that is because there was that gap. So I have a lot of people that are actually looking for people like me. So that's where I usually get a lot of engagement from. But for me, it's a personal goal starting, next year to actually start doing a proper outreach. And that's what we spoke about briefly, in the beginning of the call, to start, making myself also visible to people, not just through network marketing.
I think that's really great. And with this, I think the thing I find often with people's adapt stories is there's often like a driver. There's something that is driving you or that is sort of propelling you forward in the direction you're going. And for you, you mentioned that you're one of those people who knew from the get go that you are going to be doing something in finance. And here you are doing everything in finance. What is the thing that you think is really driving you? Because, like we said, money is not just about the flow of money. It's the psychology of money. It's the
Hmm.
you said it's a lot of these mindset influences, the cultural background, all these different
Yeah,
issues. And what is it for you? Like, what is your driver with money?
maybe two things. I've always wanted to become a millionaire, and I'm being brutally honest with you. I've always wanted to become a millionaire, not just because I want to just have the title, but one, I want to become wealthy so that I can give my family the kind of life that I want to give them. My kids, I give them the future that I probably didn't have. Not that I'm going to make everything easy for them, but at least give them that first step. And then I also want to be able to become an angel investor one day.
Mm.
I want to be able to become one, again, creating representation. I want to become an angel investor someday so that I'll be able to invest in African businesses to promote, again, business and growth in the community. So I've always wanted to, save and create more wealth for myself so that I can be in a position to do all of these things. Now, obviously, one way of doing that is working for a company all your life and advancing the corporate ladder. But even with that, it comes with a lot of responsibilities the more money you make. And every person who has built wealth will tell you that there are three ways of becoming wealthy: creating a business, investing in real estate, and investing in the stock market. Those are the three main areas of becoming rich. And the one that is the most rewarding and very is also very quickly done quickly is obviously having a business, right? So for me, if I'm gonna create a business, what business can I create? I can only create a business from what I can offer, right? And what I can offer is financial literacy and financial competence and structure and show people how I am building wealth, right? So that way, I'm actually, building my business and achieving that first goal that I've set for myself personally. The second thing is that I don't want to be the only one succeeding. I want to have a community of people that is succeeding so we can do businesses together. If you look at the Chinese community or the Asian community, some of them, they come to Germany, they put their funds together, they start a restaurant here, and then once it becomes a self-sustaining business, they give it to one person, they move on to another restaurant, and then they help themselves. So if I'm gonna build wealth for myself, then I can also do that for somebody else. And if we all, you know, become wealthy, then hey, it's all better for everybody. So for me, it's a win-win. So what is the best thing that I can do to help the community, and the best thing that I can also do to help myself? And this business that I've chosen for myself is, for me, the way to do that long term.
Yeah, thank you for that. I really love that because I see how it's so tightly connected to also you personally. And often we distance ourselves from what money gives us. And I guess even when you say that you would like to become a millionaire and be able to offer your family a certain lifestyle, it's actually the lifestyle that you are closely personally connected to. So I really appreciate you sharing that. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think I would schedule a session with you. We do some Pilates and yoga, and we have Jollof with your wife at the end of it. I think this would be perfect because you did say that she's a really great cook.
Absolutely, absolutely. Whenever, if you do find yourself actually in Munich, then please let me know and I can invite you over.
Yeah, it's a bit unfortunate because I will be there this weekend, but unfortunately, it's like already a packed weekend. But the next time,
Yes.
absolutely. Yeah. My very last question to you is you have a magic ball, and 1 year from now, we are sitting together speaking. What has happened in this 1 year?
Oh, hmm. What has happened in that 1 year? I would have more than 1,000 clients from the African community, and I would have helped at least more than a dozen people acquire their dream home in Germany. Yeah. For me, I don't think by then I would have enough to get my dream home yet because I live in Munich and Munich properties are very expensive. So it will take maybe another 2, 3 years for me to get there. But at least on that journey, I know I would have already created success for some other people, and I want to have a lot of Africans in my portfolio. Because to be honest with you, today I have more non-Africans in my portfolio than Africans.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I think that is a beautiful vision and also may it happen, So I'm really looking forward to sort of connecting with you ongoing. I'm sure we are going to keep in contact and I will probably also lean into your expertise. But thank you so much for joining me today. I think
Yeah,
that was
you're
really
welcome.
helpful. Especially, I think one of the things that you really highlighted right at the beginning of the show that I really want to also sort of repeat or something I'm taking away is how personal, how individualized finance is, and this is not just tied to location, the country you're in, or the profession you're in, but it's tied to what are your goals, your dreams, what's your
Yeah.
psychology actually, what's your mindset, So I really think that came through in this talk. And I'm glad that you didn't try to give us generic, oh, you have to do this in order to be a millionaire or something like that. I appreciate that. So thanks for your time.
Absolutely, and thanks for inviting me. I'm more than happy to share all of that. I know there's a lot of questions you wanted us to go through and more that we could talk about, but maybe we can have a part two, depending on if your audience want more.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think so. So thanks, Coven.
Yeah, you're welcome.